Hey everybody, today I'm doing a small tutorial because they changed up the way projectiles work in Gamemaker Studio 2, which has had a big effect on me. So I wanted to showcase what I've managed to figure out within a matter of 4 days. Okay. So what I was able to create was a power-up which does a really cool and really familiar technique, and a regular attack which just kind of shoots a bullet straight forward. And I have my player, which is over here, and we have a basic movement method, and if you release the key you stop moving. That's power up 1. Okay. And yeah, there we go. So this is basically how it works. You have instance create layer. And instance create layer, you put in the X variable, the Y variable, and this is where it's being created. So if you put X and Y and just that, whatever the X and Y variable are for the sprite that's creating it, that is exactly where it's going to go. If you put X plus something or Y plus something, it's going to reference your the sprite's X and Y variable plus or minus whatever you put. So keep that in mind. Now, for purposes of the player, enemies, and various bullets, I have Playground as the little logo here. And that is basically where all these pretend non-existent things are doing battle. So that is where we have that. Effects is stuff that happens above the playground. Think of that as the person in a play who's running by with colored paper to represent fire or something. I don't know. But effects are literally that. It's an entire section I have for stuff that appears above the thing that's being hit. I usually use it for hit sparks or explosions or something like that. Now, back in the day, I had a script which, after going through 3 tutorials, I created this Frankensteinian script that was beautiful. However, I don't really need it much anymore. Mainly because of the fact I've already figured out a way to pretty much do exactly what the script does without using the script, because of the new way projectiles work. Nowadays, yeah, you still go X, Y, name the layer, and you say what object you're summoning. But now, there's a whole optional thing that you put in these little bracers, and these are instructions that you are giving. So I know it might not look like much, but when you're that parentheses goes to that, by the way. And so the optional thing, the structs / instructions are in those parentheses. The parentheses for the if is over here. Well, brackets. This is a parentheses, this is a bracket. Whatever. Look. Point is, where the brackets go and where the parentheses go is important. So when you inevitably do this in whatever project you're going to do, keep in mind to do that. Unless you have it turned off when you're looking at the bottom of the stuff you're putting in, whatever code you're putting in will give like a little tip, as you can kind of see by looking at the bottom of the event thing over there. It'll say instance create layer in this case, and it'll tell you where you're writing. So here's the X, here's the Y, here's the layer name, here's the object, and here's all the structs. Alright, now, and you see I'm highlighting that over there. That's me highlighting the parentheses, and that's the brackets for the structs. Okay. So for this, I made sound2, which is the sound strike variable. For the range attack, this is the specific sound that happens when the range attack is fired, and is referenced in the range attack. The sprite index is the sprite that the range attack is going to be. In this case, it is a pro bullet. And this is the V speed, which is -10. And then final thing is direction. Now, if I wanted to add an additional struct, I would put in our comma, I'd put in our thing, I'd put in our colon, and another whatever that thing is. Okay? So there you go. And that's how that works. That's how a projectile works. Now, by default, I am firing straight forward. So that's direction 0. Now, this is a big thing. So I'm going to open this. There we go. You see this image? This is what is known as universal directions. These directions have been around since Gamemaker 8 many, many years ago. Okay? They haven't changed much because math is math. So, so if we're firing forward, straight forward, you see the center of that pie chart? The very center of the pie chart. That is where your character is. So when the bullet starts, that's where it starts. You want it to go to the left, you say direction 180. You want it to go the right, you say direction 0. You want it to go up, you say direction 90. You want it to go down, you say direction 270. You want it to go a little bit in between, that's a 15. You want the same thing but on the lower half, then you put a minus there, etc., etc., etc. This right here, this chart, this is where you're going to basically use the directions to just launch and yeet your projectiles in whatever way you so wish. You want to do multiple projectiles at once, then you put in multiple instance create layers at once. All right. I'm going to say that one more time. If you want to create multiple projectiles at once, you put in multiple projectiles at once. Now, once you figure out a way to do a timer or an alarm, you can make an enemy that shoots projectiles rapidly. And a timer, they will basically do this. And once you figure out that, you can maybe make an enemy which shoots in a specific pattern and then switches up to a different pattern, etc., etc., etc. And you keep doing this, and you will eventually create a decent chunk of enemy variety, as well as attack variety. So now that I've kind of just basically showed you the concept, you're probably thinking like me, well, then I'll just use the same bullet, and you don't want that. Here's why. If you do that, you're going to have problems, and you might have a boss that literally kills itself. I'm not encouraging self-harm. I'm saying if you program the damage code to work off the same attack as the player because you want to save space, you will notice that the boss will possibly run into its own attack because of the way it's creating the projectile. So it will create a projectile which it gets hurt by in its own chest, and it will go down like a bad shonen antagonist. Okay? So, if you don't want that, you want to create different range attacks. For purposes of this exercise, I created O player range and O enemy range. Should be very obvious which goes to what. So if O enemy range hits O player, then O player is destroyed. And I'm actually going to go with instance destroy other and instance destroy self once it hits, so that way this thing doesn't hit us twice. I think that might be the problem. I was playing it earlier on an earlier recording, and I think that is the issue. I'm not going to have the villain destroy itself, just this for the projectile. Alright. Now for power up one let's see. There we go. That's the starting charge up sound, and then we have the sound effect that happens when bullets come into existence. Power up 1 false is a straightforward shot, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a nice wave of 5 shots. Those of you who know me should probably know where this is going. So, when the player is destroyed, in the effects, it's going to create an explosion, which is going to appear above us while we respawn. And the reason we're going to respawn is because the explosion at animation end is going to create the player and then destroy itself. I'm going to go with collision, enemy range, and villain. And it's going to be the same thing, which is instance destroy other. And this is going to basically make it to where the opponent can't spam kill us. That is what we're going to be looking at with the explosion over there. Alright. Now, before we start things up, I'm going to show you a little bit about the sprite for your projectile. So the first thing we're going to go for is SPR Pro Bullet. This is SPR Pro Bullet. I'm going to show you something. It's the collision mask. You see where the collision mask is, how it surrounds the entire thing? That's good for us, but that's not good for the bad guy. The bad guy, or opponents, what have you, the antagonist, they have to have not as good a bullet. So that way the player can feel rewarded. Okay? So we go to faux bullet over here, which is a different color, so that way the player isn't confused. There's the collision mask. You see that gooey center, that lighter part over there? That's where the projectile actually hits. If that part doesn't hit and the player's just like up here, the player can actually get close to the bullet without taking damage. This is a traditional trope which is used in most professional shmups. Alright. For the record, I had to do research to find that out. There's a lot of stuff. When you just think of a shmup, you think of, oh, so this is like Toho, this is like bullets everywhere, and there's a bunch of spam, and it's like, no. Saying that a shoot 'em up is nothing more than bullet spam is like saying that all an MMO is text boxes and then 40 people or 25 to 40 people running at a giant piñata. Yes, there's some truth to both stereotypes, but there is also a lot of small details that are missed. And small details, especially in game development, are very important. I wish I knew half of what I know now around a couple years ago. And some of these new tools that I'm describing to you, I wish I had back then. So, there is that. Moving forward, we're going to go to villain. Now, this is the thing which is the parent object for the antagonist. When takes damage from the projectile, is destroyed immediately. When it is destroyed, it creates a cloud. And it has nothing in the creation event. Because we're just dealing with enemies that go down in one shot. Now, if we had a flash effect, or I knew some more things about the newer way the code works, or stuff like that, we could probably make it to where enemies have more hit points, etc., and that would be fine. But we're not here to talk about enemy AI, we're here to talk about projectiles. So, as I've already told you about the pattern that the player's using, right now what I'm talking to you about is what the villain's using. So I've kind of explained to you also the sprite hitbox over there. So let's talk about enemy range over here. When it's outside the view, it destroys itself. Why is that? Well, because the way our code is currently set up, if I remove this, watch what happens. I'm going to comment this out, and we're going to play the game, and I want you to watch this. Okay. So there's the credits. There's our title. Press enter. Woohoo! Unfairable! Yes! Infinite death! Behold the horror! Alright. So how do we stop that? Well, you stop that by basically putting instance destroy back in. Once I put instance destroy back in, here's my regular shot. See? I can get this close. Right on the edge. I can ride up. Boom. Now, I can power up. Okay, seems there's an unfair advantage. My projectiles aren't being destroyed when they cross the view. Oops. So, in order to make sure that doesn't happen, we're going to have to do the same thing that we did with the villain's projectiles, and that's just kind of going to have to be a thing. So, enemy range, outside view, 0, instance destroy. Now we're going to go with ours. Same thing. Outside. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Outside, view 0. Instance destroy. There we go. All right. So now, watch what happens. Now we're going to go in. See? They're still there. So I'm going to pick up this, destroy that. So I got my cool attack, it's awesome, but what happens when I die? Okay. And oh no, I have lost my power-up. There you go. So that's pretty much the gist of it. Yeah. You want make sure your projectile destroys itself when it's outside of you, so that way you don't kill stuff. You don't want your player killing half your level by accident because they spam attack. Now you don't have to have the player lose their power up when they die. That is totally me ripping off of the same thing where I got the power up that I taught you how to make. Just to kind of showcase that it's possible. Now, as for the way I did the backgrounds and sprites, if you want, I can explain that a little bit later too. But again, this entire thing was basically me trying to explain to you how a new projectile works. And again, please do remember that the concept of bullet collision and that sort of thing, go reference the earlier parts of this video if you feel the need to go over it again. And I hope this has been helpful. Like I said, it's projectiles, direction code, and it's very basic, very simple, and it's a good foundation that you can build a lot more things off of. By itself, it's actually rather nice. Alright, well, I'll catch you later. I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you and have a great day.